minutes. Alrighty. Well, it is 5:30 somewhere. That is here in the city of Elkhart, Iowa. So let's go ahead and call meeting number 1, the special council meeting, to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Stuff going on here. Get this in order over here. Alright. Call of the roll. Council vacancy is currently present. Borky.
Here.
Edler.
Here.
Schaefer.
Present.
Fordyce. Here. Alrighty.
Yes.
On to number 4, approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda. Second it.
Warnke.
Aye.
Adler.
Aye.
Schaefer.
Aye.
Fordyce. Aye. Alrighty. Number 5, moving right along here. City Council work session pertaining to city goals established during November 2024 strategic planning session. So I called for this special meeting. I felt it appropriate with budget season upon us and all of the fun things going on with hopefully 2 new council members, but now 1 vacancy due to Mr. Campbell's resignation, but et cetera, et cetera. I wanted to get us all together and amidst the fun and the chaos ladies at City Hall are having with everything going on, and just kind of review the goals that we had set, those of us who were here in 24, the goals that we had come up with, what order we put them in, where they aligned, if we believe they were still appropriate, pertinent, in the correct order, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if we just want to go through this page by page and kind of review it, or if anybody has any recommendations, or if they've got anything that they've already reviewed. If you think it's out of order or something needs adjusted, I'm all ears, I'm open for it. Just kind of a work session, brainstorming session.
I'd be most curious on what our newest member has to say about the work that you were not a part of.
You know, reviewing some of this stuff, I think, you know, everything listed here are really good goals. I was just kind of curious in some of the reasoning behind some of them.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, I was looking at where we just had it. I just lost it. It was, I don't know what section it was, but more parking along Main Street, right? I guess one question I had is what's driving that? Is that a request of the residents? Is that a request from the city? Is that just something that someone observed? Yes, some of this stuff are just some clarification or some reasoning, pretty helpful.
Yeah, that was in part brought to our attention by 1 business owner specifically, but it's also been kind of a, I don't want to call it a reoccurring issue, but for lack of a better phrase, a reoccurring issue with just parking availability, parking. This mannerism is a good word to use when I refer to like the city festival, where it's just kind of a free for all, and a bulk of the downtown. I call it, you know, for a little town downtown, is the parking is not available. So folks are resorting to side streets or what have you, and to keep folks from like literally parking in other folks' yards and things of that nature. I think that was part of why that was on there. In addition to, again, there were some requests from 1 business owner specifically, but I think it was echoed from a couple others, just additional parking options as well if there were road closures or what have you. So
I think we're maxed out on Main Street realistically, and I think that was a big push for the last council or whatever, which one, but I just don't know that we can find more, and I think somebody recommended at one point to put up a parking garage or something, and I think
that one was in jest, but yes.
That's absolutely ridiculous.
Yes.
South Park.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I just don't know where we're gonna find extras parking, in my opinion, but.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, would it be helpful? Yes, I believe, but exactly to your point.
Is it logical?
Where?
Where?
And with how town is currently laid out, unless we would go through and bulldoze the whole thing and start over again, which nobody's going to be a fan of, and I would veto. How would we do it better, or how can we improve upon what we have? So
Maybe this is getting off topic, but just on that same note, has there ever been any discussions or ideas about like a satellite parking lot like a grass parking lot somewhere where, I don't know if the city owns any property, some open area, we can just park vehicles for a festival or, something like that.
Nothing that's been brought to my attention, obviously with a delicate touch, but with code enforcement, stuff like that, parking on grass, that's kind of a nay, but it's also one of those, if it's a special event or for a specific reason, then that'd be up to the property owner at that point, but again, code enforcement. I do know that the Faith Christian Fellowship Church, at the southwest corner of the main intersection, if you will, 126th and Grant, they have graciously offered, and it's open for folks, especially with like baseball, softball games going on there, festivals, city events, things like that. If we need overflow parking, yes, it's a little bit of a walk if you're getting to Main Street,
Yeah.
but their parking lot is available and open. So I just definitely ask that you don't park on the grass, because that's my project over there. I've redone that whole garden. So
Couple things to add, Travis. So Johnny mentioned part of the Main Street parking request was from business owners, and it was twofold. One, during peak hours, Saturday nights, volleyball nights, things like that. They're currently essentially borrowing the Tompkins lot for parking, which, they may or may not always be able to do. So future casting a little bit was part of that. The second part of it was there was a prospective business that he had looked into building next to Perry's Egg business. It used to be a lot of other things, but it's Perry's Egg business now, you know what I mean, just west of that, in that lot. And part of what he said precluded him from being interested in building at this time would be parking availability, because there's a limited number of spots in front of Perry's, and then there's a limited number of spots in front of the post office, and then he would only have those 5 to 7 parallel spots. So he didn't know if he had a restaurant or a cafe or an ice cream shop type setup plus some apartments above it was the proposed. He didn't know where his tenants could park on a regular basis. So that was part of it. And so Johnny, I know a couple different times on busier nights, myself as well, we would go down and drive around and just kind of look, and there were pretty ample parking still down on the other end of Main Street, but people would have to get out and walk and come down, and it's just not as convenient if you're going to a business to walk. But again, sometimes you have to if you want to go places. I mean, downtown, you go to the Wells Fargo Center, you're parking as far away as, you know what I mean? So not apples to apples, but you get the point. When there's demand for it, people will park wherever. And then obviously, the secondary part of that is taxpayer money, right? Funding parking or trying to dig out curb and gutter and put in sidewalks and do all that. What we decided at the time, or at least talked about at the time, is when we get to the stormwater project that would include the west side of town, to potentially look at widening streets, putting in parking, and all of that as part of the stormwater project, so that when we're putting in the new drainage, we're putting those things in, we can modernize parts of that and include parking as an option there to stop the parking in the yards and things of that nature, to help from a code enforcement standpoint, but also honestly just to add parking for downtown businesses and potential growth and causing less problems. As far as any grass lots that could be used during festivals and things, I mean, we have the rock parking lot, down by the maintenance shed, that I guess maybe, but I think people already park there during some of the festivals. I'm not really sure. I guess I've never really thought about it, but I know with the tractor pull the night before, usually there's a lot of overflow left down there.
and that's
It
all
doesn't
kind
get
of,
pulled out.
and that's all pit
So-
area that's not easily accessible.
Right.
So it's not. I should say
So
it's not
that's-
accessible.
That's really the only spot that would qualify for that. So I guess 1 or 2 days a year, it gets kind of messy with people parking everywhere. When there's rain, it gets literally messy. But that was where that request came from, and outside of the stormwater project, I wouldn't see any. There's nothing in the CIP or the project lists, in the next, well, till 2031 at least, where we've taken up or considered realistically adding parking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the context I can remember from that conversation. To help with that, I guess.
No, okay. Helpful comments.
So in terms of, this kind of molds into that capital improvements plan worksheet that you had sent out, Katie, that I had re-forwarded out to everybody again today.
And thank you for doing that. Rob.
Yeah, if we wanted to get into some of that discussion, I know we're having a meeting to set all that up at some point, but I think that might guide some of the shorter term goal setting stuff. Is there any parts of that anybody wanted to pull out? Because when you compare that to what we came up with in November, and then look at the order in which they were put out, this appears to be kind of the, I don't know what page this is 6 to 7-ish. That was not a 6-7 joke, I promise.
I ignored it.
But around that area, that's the page I'm referring to. That says CIP priorities up at the top. And that's kind of where we threw some ideas up against the wall. You know, the expanding of the lagoon, but we wanted to do some work on that. Katie worked with the contractors and our engineers to look at population expansion and projections. But like the shorter term stuff, the things that if you guys look at the letter or number 1 and then work your way through that, was there anything out of that you thought, oh, this looks completely out of place, or oh, this is way quicker than we thought? Or was there anything that stood out from that list that you guys would want to run through? Maybe would be a good direction to take this as well, if that's okay with you, Johnny. It's
Yes,
your
no,
meeting,
I have no issue with that, so that's what we're here is to discuss things and have that conversation.
Keep going. Keep going. Next page,
I mean, I was thinking, we had a couple conversations in the past,
There you go.
the floodwater mitigation phase 1 accomplished a lot of what you guys were hoping to accomplish, at that time on that end of town. And I don't know whether phase 2 is as high a priority for me as it was before, because the mitigation is in a better spot, and I think there's some potentially bigger issues that I'd like to look into as far as, we're still having all that trouble with the infiltration on the water line and whatnot, knowing we need to get the sewer line revamped and all that business. So that was the big thing I was looking at, was just whether, and I don't have good answers, because obviously I don't live in that chunk, but my understanding from the people that I communicate with that do live in that section is, it is better because of what happened with phase 1. I don't think we're in a position where we need to like abandon phase 2, but I'm not sure if we need to give it quite the priority stance that we were giving it a year ago when we were talking.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'd tag off that just to kind of counter, just with some, just some conversation or in passing comments or what have you, folks that are still with, if we do get a heavy rain, especially with Western Grant, pooling and puddling and ponding and for long extended periods of time. So, while I don't think it's as bad as maybe it used to be, even though that's not directly affected by what that project handled, at what point are we just going to get another 100,000, 50, 10-year storm, whatever? You're an engineer, tell me what I'm messing up here, but when are we going to get that event again that causes major problems? So while I think that I agree with you that maybe it's not as high, I will say that because I went through and I set my ratings and everything as far as that all anything infrastructure related was kind of higher on my list.
Yeah.
Just to whether it gets started this year or next year or what have you, the calendar year is not necessarily fiscal year, but calendar year, just to let's really seriously start looking at it and let's get ahead of it so we can budget appropriately for it, so we can. Okay, yeah, we can't amp it in 26, but yeah, we can break ground in 27, so to speak, to get that project going. So, because it's, as things deteriorate, as things continue to age, potential issues, it's not gonna get any better unless we do something about it, whatever that something may be. So I think it's appropriate that we definitely look into that. Yes, there's going to be a cost, but I definitely think that it's worth looking into sooner than later instead of kicking the proverbial can down the road.
Yeah, I don't wanna drop it necessarily, I just think there might be some things that we might wanna prioritize just
Sure.
to shake higher.
Sure.
So something to consider, Angie, and I think if it wasn't Forrest, it was the other gentleman from B&K that was here a meeting or two ago. Part of the proposal could be combining phase 2 and 3 into one thing. Minor issues with that, major issues with that, that's a lot of disruption to the city, that's a lot of dirt being moved at once. That's if we get rain during, you get the point. But the third part of that, you mentioned that infiltration, so that actually was project number 8, right when I called you this morning, which is the sanitary sewer rehabilitation. And what's happening with that is when we get heavy rains, those sanitary sewer couples that have they've worn out, the stormwater is getting into the sanitary system, and that is what has caused our pumps to work overtime. And part of what we've already done is we've upgraded the pump, but is speaking with the DNR, working with them on this, it's not what their preference is, and so it is a priority to get that fixed. And my hope would be we could look at potentially working 2 and 3 together at some point and including the rehabilitation along with that, and not necessarily breaking it into, you know, this happens this year, this happens next year, this happens the year after, but perhaps 2 and 3 happen within one calendar year, one fiscal year. And then the sanitary improvement, they could do it as they go, because they're already going to be, if you looked at the maps, which they're color coding, I think I followed along pretty well, but that's what we have engineers for. It looked like some of the areas that we would be digging into would be impacted by both. So digging it up and then putting the dirt back over it, replanting everything, and then digging it up again a year later doesn't seem like it makes a whole lot of sense. And what I've, you know, pondered about that is making sure that we choose the right partner then for that project, making sure that we're going with, you know, a firm that has experience in both things and that would be considered a leader in that sanitary sewer area or water mitigation, as opposed to just maybe using the same contractor that's always been used in the past. Now, it may end up being that way, but my proposal would be that we broaden that scope a little bit.
And I would
we
definitely
find
be
the
more
right partner.
amenable to that, and particularly, yeah, if we can 2 birds with 1 stone.
Part of it is the funding, right,
Dig a
from the
hole once in
emails.
that place.
Katie, do you wanna talk about that, cause you put those emails together about the funding sources and how it could be beneficial to do them all at the same time, correct?
Yes, so this is on the regular agenda as well with the stormwater phases, but there is federal funding available, in this year, 2026, and we are not certain if it will be available next year. Because it's federal funding, it could just be cut off. But that grant cycle is up to $500,000, which would cover about, if we did both phases together, about half, almost half. And we would have 2 opportunities to apply for that if this year, if you guys decide you wanna go after it. we have
This
two-
year being budget year 27 or this year being?
This calendar year.
Okay, calendar year 26, so it would push into budget year 27.
Yes,
Okay.
cause we could
That's
apply,
fine.
yes, we could apply in this spring and then again in August.
Which would push it up, Angie, further into the A part of the ranking
Yeah.
of immediate, due to the funding, but if I understand it correctly, if we aren't awarded the grant, we aren't able to get the lower interest funding, I believe it was through the DNR part of the project, or was it SIP, I can't remember.
Yes, it would be SRF.
Through
funding.
sorry, and then acronyms, through SRF, then we wouldn't have to do it. If the funding wasn't available, then we could push it and try again, in theory. If the grant is available again next year, we can push it another year and then refocus on other projects that were maybe in that similar budgeting range, if that's how it would go out. Not to take that off of the
Yeah,
next meeting's
sure.
agenda, but
It all flows together.
it seems like it does, and that's why we put this together, was so that we're not waiting until, you know, houses were getting flooded, and we're not waiting until sewers are backing up. And right now, Ron and Rick, every time it rains, I can tell you, and you know this as well, they get pretty darn nervous when we have those potentials of those storms, because they'll send me screenshots of what the pump capacities are at, and it's above what they're spec to do. Because of that infiltration. It has gotten better. Phase 1 did a lot of work to help with that, but it isn't something that can be ignored, and the fact that it maybe just wasn't properly done the first time is part of the issue, and we have the ability to correct that as we
You know,
go.
we can roll it with and dig 1 hole, then I feel a lot better about that.
Yeah, there would definitely be some overlap. I'm not the engineer on the project, so I wouldn't be able to tell you how much or what percentage, but it seemed major. It seemed like enough that it makes sense. And as much as as personal opinions with that would probably, you know, push me to want to maybe rank things like ballpark improvements and things like that a little bit lower on the list, because, you know, maybe a little bit less important. The ballparks are functional. We could buy extra, lime, dirt, whatever you wanna call it, yeah, lime. We could do small projects through donations or through the Memorial Softball Association. We could work with EBCB, potentially Elkhart Betterment, to find funding for smaller things, improvements. We voted on some stuff last week with the grant, or last month. That might be the play on something like that then, unless the funding for this doesn't go through, the SRF doesn't go through, or the grant doesn't go through, then maybe the ballparks could get bumped up if that's what we feel the community wants instead, so.
I don't feel like the ballparks should be our main focus right now. I think it should be, improvements to the infrastructure of town. That's high on my priority list. I'm not saying that that's a bad way to go, but I think it's more maybe a parks project, maybe grant driven project, not quite our main focus right now. That just my opinion, but I know there's lots of new, like ball field opportunities or like companies coming into town and there's opportunity there. I just think that infrastructure is higher on our priority list.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
That makes sense to me. But we can save the rest of that CIP conversation unless there's other stuff you guys wanna pull out, cause we have another meeting for that coming up in the nearest future when all the scorings and rankings are put together. Or we can keep going on that. I wanted to touch on a few things from the rest of this, but if you wanna go a different direction next, go ahead, go whatever direction you guys wanna go.
I'll look to my left. Do you guys have any other comments, anything that you wanna touch on before I let Brad keep talking?
Let's go with it.
So, you know, some of the initiatives that we looked at on this list, and we put them as I just wanna go down and look to make sure I say it correctly. That were identified in the survey that had the most, like, check marks next to it, meaning people, you know, ranked at the highest. Number one was Ankeny encroachment, and the perception of Ankeny encroachment, and then on the next one, if you look at number 3, identified in the survey was annexation and bordering agreements, which are one and the same when looked at, and Katie, did you wanna give maybe a little bit of an update on kind of where we're at with some of the annexation talks, or any updates that you have maybe on the potential development of the industrial park? So we just passed the first of the year, and I know there's gonna be some stuff there that gets moving at some point, but feel free
Yeah,
to
so
fill in the blanks there.
the landowner, Nichols, has several parcels west of the industrial park and he is very interested in annexing. At this time, he asked for quotes for all 7 parcels.
Quotes meaning, we're not buying. Okay.
Yes, sorry.
No, just
Property
making sure.
tax estimates, you know, if you were to switch districts. So provided that to him. He is going down south for the winter for a couple months, and so he asked that we pause the process until he's back in March. But we will be looking to work with the city attorney once he's back in town so he can be involved with that process. As far as a border agreement, we met with Ankeny several months ago. They are not interested.
Context on that is, it's just something they don't do. It isn't
Yes.
about Elkhart, it isn't about, they do have one in existence with Polk City, but that was put into place long before the current government and structure was there. But, so it isn't like, we don't wanna do it with Elkhart, they just have it, we don't even consider it with any of our neighbors, that's just their policy. Correct? Is that
Correct,
how you took it?
yes.
Mike was there as well. Anything to add to that? Sorry. No.
No, they, as he said, they don't actively go out and look for annexations. It's all brought to them, it's all developer driven. And their thing is, you know, because they don't actively go out and look for annexations, they don't feel there's a need for annexation agreements.
Correct. That is how I understood it as well. And then there was some recent interest from a landowner to the south about potential development down the road, but it's the
Yeah.
first time we've ever really made strides, I think, with figuring that part of it out, I guess, right?
Yes, so that landowner, he owns several parcels south of town surrounding the Memorial Park. He expressed some interest in, you know, he stated, I'm getting to the point where I'm interested in developing, possibly selling. So I did try to reach out to him a little bit and just see if he would want me to reach out to developers or get started on it, but he responded back and said, you know, I'm just gonna lay low for now, but I'll let you know in the future when I get to that point. So that is an option, you know, they mentioned something about Memorial Park and being willing to work with us there if we wanted to possibly bring up expansion ideas. So that will be great for us in the future, but as of now, that's kind of standing still.
And then the only update I have, unless you've heard anything on the actual industrial park expansion, is that Mr. Bowles is one of those 80-acre parcels would be part of that. And then Travis said he would update us sometime in Q1 this year as to where that kind of stands, and because they're working on, what was numbers? The land exchange, it was 5537 something land exchange, I can't remember, I have to Google that.
1031.
don't think so. I don't know. Land exchanges with the property owner, and they still hadn't found a suitable property for that yet. But he said there would be some updates when the ground thaws. Is what he could
Sounds like a good network, I like it.
That's what I do think all the time.
So, from like a planning standpoint, we talked about Main Street plan implementations, capital improvement plans, comprehensive plan implementation. Those things are all in the works. So in the last 2 months since we set that out as an objective for City Hall, they've done a fantastic job of working on that, in my opinion, and progressing those things forward. Did you, I don't think I'm taking anything off the next agenda, but did we want to talk a little bit about the process or the progress of the comprehensive plan at all, and the feedback that she's been receiving, or am I pulling
She's
out?
coming tonight
Okay, that's what I thought.
to present, so,
I remember seeing it on there. I just didn't know if any of it was relevant to this meeting or if there was
Yeah.
anything you wanted to highlight.
nope, she attended the last Parks meeting and provided the Parks Board with the feedback related specifically
Perfect.
about Parks.
Perfect.
But she will be in attendance if
Awesome.
you have
No,
questions.
we can save it for that. Yep. And then the other one that received the most votes as I scroll through from like an infrastructure was water sewer expansion, which we just kind of talked about. Treatment facility, the water line, which is another one of the CIP projects. I scored that one pretty highly because being kind of in touch with Ron and Rick, quite a bit over the years, that is something that they're they're taking water up there right now. And if there's ever an emergency or anything like that, they would love access to fresh running water from a safety standpoint. Yep. And then as we go through there, the other ones that received votes, but that were put down further on the line, the 20, 30, 31 were fire station, city hall, community centers. And there's a little bit of a conversation I think we could probably have around the proposal. Did you want to talk about that now a little bit? Or do you want to save that for the main meeting once you have a little bit more time to look into that as far as the building
Yeah,
basis?
I'd like to look into it.
Okay. So there's some really large capital projects on that list, and once she gets these scoring sheets back from everybody and can go through it, I think we can have a pretty robust conversation about what the next year's budget can look like, and then we have our budget meetings. But there wasn't really anything else I wanted to pull out of this. If anybody else, like I said, had anything else, I think we're right on line. The code enforcement received 4x on the votes out of 5 or 6 votes that came through. I feel like that is progressing pretty well. The success rate is really high from the amount of letters that are going out to the amount of conversions and things that are getting cleaned up, so that seems to be going pretty well, but that's just my input on that. Increase in community events, I've seen a lot more of those, puzzle blues, things like that. Multiple different things that are taking place. We revisited the abatement policy, which was a goal. We ended the residential side. We've had more than one person's feedback. Even yesterday, talking with Mr. Hess about, potential commercial abatements and changing those or incentivizing, doing better commercial abatements, industrial abatements, things like that. So at some point, that would be something we could look into. But the rest of it is, I think, organizational effectiveness was right up on top of there. We have lists that are sent to us of the changes that are taking place. We just talked about this at a meeting last week about some safeguards that can be put in place, and I've been very satisfied with the changes in that in the last couple months since we brought it up. No further questions.
No, there's definitely been a lot going on in the last 2 years, changes, as far as additions, things that possibly should have been in place, probably should have been in place for a long time that just either weren't or never were thought of or what have you. I tip of the hat to the council at that time in the last 2 years, and as new council coming in and all that, just as we keep moving forward and progressing, we're not trying to, I'm gonna poke a little bit here, we're not trying to become the next big city, we're not trying to become the next Ankeny, nothing like that, for good Lord's sake, no, but at the same time, we have to have things in place to make sure that we can run effectively and efficiently, and we have, we don't have what happened? Well, we don't have a policy for that. Well, we need to fix that. So, get things in place for safeguards. So, some of it's a discovery process, some of it's just a catch-up process, some of it's just never thought of before, never brought up. So, I'm happy with how things have been going. Continue to be happy, and I'm looking forward to the future. So, there's my little spiel and rant.
I'm just glad we have a plan. I mean, when we did, and I don't remember if it was this one or if it was something before this one, the conversation that we had then was we wanted something that would last past all of us coming and going in and out of our roles, because we've seen so much start and stop. And I'm I'm proud of the fact that I think we've done a good job of trying to create something to work forward with, and then we really, to Brad's point, stuck through it in some spots where we can see some really solid progress and proof of effort. So I'm just really satisfied with that, and I wanna see that continue. It's the same thing that we've been working on, discussion in parks is, let's make a plan, let's have something moving forward so that no matter what bodies are in play, everybody knows what we were driving towards and can continue to steer the ship accordingly, so.
Any other comments or questions or?
If we, over time, at meetings, if you guys have new goals that you want me to formally add to this, just let me know so that I can keep it on my list that I look at every day, so.
No, and obviously Katie, if you see something that is either already on here or you think should be on here, please bring it to us, bring it to council, let us, discuss it, bring it up, and, council of it, for all of you, if we see something that is either already on this list, or as she just said, thinks it should be, or we think, no, this definitely needs to, based off of things we're hearing or whatever, it needs to go up the chain or whatever. There's nothing saying that this is locked in stone, but this is just a good roadmap, and we're not just shooting from the hip anymore, we've got a plan, so.
And a big, sorry. I was gonna say, a really large part of that is making sure that as we develop, or as the developers develop the land they have in town, whether it's south that she was just talking about, whether it's the new industrial park, whether it's more houses eventually, that, one of the projects that was listed in here is an industrial park pump. That would be something that if we're gonna add to the industrial park, we should be asking the developers about the pump. We should be, the sewage line, correct? The sewage line that goes under the Tompkins building right now on the railroad and be estimated 250,000. Why would we need to expand that? Well, if they expand west of town, there's gonna be more things coming that direction. That would be a question, and we've talked to Kimberly about that in the past informally. But that would be something that was like, hey, as this gets developed, Travis Sisson, we need to work with Travis on that. Oh, sorry, I forgot the not you, Travis Sisson. There needs to be some conversations around, okay, what are you building? What is the spec? What is flowing this direction? Because he's gonna need his own pump anyways. And then utilizing, if he's gonna build a new line under the railroad tracks up there that pumps over to the lagoons, maybe we can reroute some of it and loop it, because there's been looking at the water line improvements as well, there's a lack of looping that took place when a lot of that was installed, give or take 100 years ago, in some instances, or very near 100 years ago. So as the city continues to grow, I've said it, and I'm gonna say it one time tonight, I promise, you can either control the growth or be controlled by the growth, and as the growth happens, part of controlling that is tapping into the resources that are available from those developers, and letting them know that if they want to continue to develop in our city, those are the things that we're going to expect. I mean, it's where the traffic impact study ordinance came from. It's where those conversations happen in PZ on a monthly basis, and I just want to reiterate my interest in holding them accountable and making sure that they're willing to work with us as opposed to dictating things. I think there's a middle ground there somewhere is what I'm saying.
In our packet, or the ranking items, let's see if you plan. One of them was to pretty much curb and gutter and pave 126. I don't remember talking about that, but that could have just been overwhelming for me at the time. So what was our thought process behind 126 specifically?
I was not here during that discussion.
Yeah, so that was a new one for me unless I zoned out as well.
So, where that comes from was, so Ron had brought up that the stated disrepair seems a little severe, but now that it's part of our purview and part of our responsibility, we had to look at using part of our city and streets budget, fixing that, so that's where those patches came from last year.
Right.
But, On Track, or who's the yellow and orange trucks? What are,
On track.
yeah, On Track,
The contractor.
the contractor, when they came through and did the assessment, they're the ones that pointed out that this road will need to be repaved.
It has.
And at some point, it
Does
is.
it need to be curb and gutter? Is that?
Well, part of that
Yeah,
came
I don't
from the
think it's
conversation.
necessary.
Well, it may not be, but we can get options for it. Part of it is, there's no sidewalks that connect the two sides of town, right? Or go over Grant or around Grant. There's no sidewalk that connects the ball field over, right? So putting in curb and guttering, having sidewalks potentially be part of that project, connections to different trails, things of that nature was all part of that conversation. I didn't rank it super duper high, but at some point, you know, patching it won't necessarily get us where we need to be anymore, because then every winter when we pay the county to plow it, they're just gonna take our patching back off again, because that's how it's gonna work eventually as the road declines. So there's options there, but yeah, that would be an extremely expensive project, cause some major disruptions, and it may not be something that's feasible in the next 10 years.
I can see paving it someday, you know, but I just don't see curb and gutter
Yeah.
on that street, but that's just my.
Some of it was safety, so vehicles don't leave the road if new businesses get put out there. Some of, you know, there was a lot of like little conversations, and then it's the main intersection, as you call it, across from the church, and then through, on 126 across the railroad tracks. Those sidewalks aren't really usable. Like, it was part of it was fixing all that, curbing and guttering, maybe just that part to start, and then putting the sidewalks in on both sides so that people could cross over to the ballparks, putting a crossing zone in there at some point. You get the idea. That would all be part of that. But the original conversation for that started when we started looking at the quiet zone studies to see if we could get the trains to go through town without letting us know they're going through town. And then the restrictions that came with that, and the intersection and the farm vehicles and all that was precluded. So then it was like, okay, well, what if we could put curb and guttering in and sidewalk it, and how would that work? And then the last thing I'll say on it was all also a part of the conversation of the stormwater phase 3. Because as we tear some of that up to run those lines close to it, would it make sense to do some of that all at once and see if we can get parts of it funded that way, because we're improving a major road at that point as well. So it always kind of loops back together as one gigantic project. It's just we have to divide it into chunks and make sure it's fiscally responsible, because it can't all happen at once, unfortunately, unless someone in town wins the lottery and wants to donate a lot of money to the city.
Right.
Speaking of trains running through town, now at between 3 and 5 in the morning every night, my dogs howl to the train whistle every. Yeah, they're border collies, so.
Don't
it's
think
like-
there's anything I can vote on to help you with that.
No, but I just wanted you like, no, trains are.
Yeah, just messing with it.
You just, I'm sleeping more soundly than I gave myself credit for.
Really?
Yeah,
Well,
touche.
my dog-
You just need to get your
Me too.
dog's noise canceling headphones.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, right.
right on. But that was, I don't know if that answered your question,
Yeah,
but
that's
it's
helpful. I just
been
don't- I remember
multiple
talking about
conversations, and it was written on the feedback form, and then we discussed it that day. I think Ron kind of led that part of the conversation, if memory serves.
Yep. Rings a bell. If there's nothing further, I think we can consider this workshop closed and move on to 6 adjournment for round 1 of tonight's meetings. Katie, Jen, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay, then we'll consider 5 done, on to 6 adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Warnke,
Aye.
Adler,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Fordice. Consider meeting 1 adjourned, thank you.